Marcus Brennan's world moved at the speed of money. Private jets between continents, conference calls that decided the fates of thousands, board meetings where a single signature could build hospitals or topple competitors. At 42, he'd built Brennan Global Industries from a single software patent into a $3 billion empire. Forbes called him the architect. Wall Street called him ruthless. His daughter called him nothing at all because Olivia couldn't hear him. 4 years ago, Marcus's wife, Elena, died giving birth to their only child. Placental abruption, sudden, catastrophic, irreversible. The doctors had 45 seconds to save one life. They chose the baby. Elena never held her daughter, never heard her cry, never saw the dark eyes that mirrored her own. Marcus held his newborn in a hospital corridor, surrounded by the mechanical hum of machines and the whispered condolences of nurses whose faces he'd never remember. Olivia's tiny fingers curled around his thumb. Her mouth opened in a silent wail he couldn't hear over the roaring emptiness in his chest. "Mr. Brennan," the neonatal specialist said gently, "we need to discuss some concerns." The words that followed became a second funeral. Congenital sensorineural hearing loss, profound bilateral deafness, the auditory nerves never fully developed. Cochlear implants might help, or they might not. Sign language would be essential. Her world would be silent. Marcus heard the prognosis the way drowning men hear distant thunder, muffled, distorted, meaningless. He'd buried his wife that morning. Now they were burying his daughter's future. The penthouse apartment he'd designed for Elena, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, imported Italian marble, a nursery painted soft yellow with hand-stenciled clouds, became a fortress. Marcus installed cameras in every room, motion sensors, air purifiers, temperature controls. If he couldn't give Olivia sound, he'd give her every other form of safety money could buy. He hired the best audiologists in 3 countries, flew specialists from Johns Hopkins, Stanford, the Mayo Clinic. Each visit ended the same way: apologetic headshakes, technical explanations about damaged cochlear structures, gentle suggestions to focus on alternative communication methods. By Olivia's 2nd birthday, Marcus had spent $840,000 on medical consultations. The only sound in his daughter's life remained the silence. The caregivers came in waves, each one vetted by security firms that charged $15,000 per background check. Caregiver number 1 lasted 3 weeks. She'd post photos of Olivia on social media with captions like "My little angel" and geotags showing Marcus's address. Security escorted her out while she cried about just wanting to share the joy. 2 stole Elena's jewelry, the pearl necklace Marcus had given her on their 5th anniversary, the sapphire earrings from their honeymoon in Santorini. She pawned them for $6,000 and disappeared. 3 seemed perfect until Marcus discovered she was selling information to tabloids. Billionaire's deaf daughter, A Life in Silence, ran with photos taken inside their home, intimate details about Olivia's therapy schedule, Marcus's late-night breakdowns. Myth 4. Quit via text message. Too depressing. Can't watch a kid who will never be normal. Number 5 through number 9 blurred together. Women who saw dollar signs instead of a child, who treated Olivia like a job rather than a person, who left when they realized Marcus's wealth couldn't make the work easier. Number 10 was the worst. Mrs. Patricia Hemmings came with credentials from the British Royal Nanny College, 20 years of experience, and a smile that made Marcus want to believe again. She lasted 6 months, long enough for Olivia to grow attached, long enough for Marcus to stop reviewing the security footage every night. Then he caught her on camera, feeding Olivia formula she'd watered down to make it last longer, pocketing the grocery money. When confronted, she laughed. You're so busy making money you don't even notice your daughter's starving." Olivia wasn't starving, but she was lighter than she should be. The pediatrician confirmed malnutrition, mild, fixable, but real. Marcus fired her on the spot. The agency sent her final check with a termination notice citing child endangerment. That night, watching Olivia sleep in her medical bed with monitors tracking her breathing and heart rate, Marcus made a decision. He'd watch everyone. Trust no one. The cameras would never stop recording. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The employment agency called her a last resort option. She has no formal training, the coordinator admitted over the phone. No references from wealthy families. She's worked mostly in group homes and church nurseries. But Mr. Brennan, you've rejected 43 candidates in 2 months. Your daughter needs consistent care. Send me her file, Marcus said flatly. Teresa Morales was 29 years old, high school diploma, 2 years of community college before dropping out. Currently worked 3 jobs, morning shift at a nursing home, afternoon hours at a church-run daycare, overnight cleaning crew at an office building. She lived in a 5th-floor walk-up in Queens with her grandmother and younger brother. Her application photo showed a woman with dark hair pulled into a practical braid, brown eyes that looked directly at the camera without fear or ambition, and hands that told stories, calloused, scarred across the knuckles, nails cut short, working hands. The background check came back clean. No debts beyond student loans, no criminal record, no social media presence at all, not even Facebook. The investigator's note read, "Subject lives below radar. No red flags, but also no digital footprint. Unusual for someone her age." Marcus scheduled the interview for a Tuesday afternoon. Teresa arrived 20 minutes early, wearing a simple gray dress and flat shoes, carrying nothing but a small purse and a worn leather-bound book. "You're early," Marcus said, not inviting her to sit. "Traffic was lighter than expected," she replied calmly. He gestured to the book. "What's that?" "My Bible," she said without apology or explanation. Marcus's jaw tightened. The last thing he needed was someone trying to pray his daughter's deafness away. "I'm not looking for a missionary." "Good," Teresa said, meeting his eyes. "I'm not applying to be one." Something in her steadiness made him pause. Most applicants either fawned or fidgeted. Teresa simply waited, hands folded, posture relaxed but attentive. "My daughter is deaf," Marcus said bluntly, profoundly. "Doctors say there's no hope for improvement. No medical intervention will work. If you're here thinking you can change that, leave now." Teresa tilted her head slightly. "I'm here to care for a child, Mr. Brennan, not to change her." Marcus led Teresa through the penthouse, laying out expectations with the precision of a military briefing. "Cameras in every room except bathrooms," he said, pointing to the small black domes mounted in corners. "They record continuously. I review footage randomly, sometimes daily, sometimes weekly. You never know when I'm watching." "Understood," Teresa said, no defensiveness in her voice. "Olivia follows a strict schedule." He handed her a laminated chart. Breakfast at 7, physical therapy at 8:30, occupational therapy at 10, lunch at noon, quiet time from 1 to 3, sign language practice at 3:30, dinner at 6, bath at 7, bed by 8. "That's a lot of therapy for a 4-year-old, Teresa observed quietly. Marcus's expression hardened. "The therapists say consistency is crucial. We can't waste time." "May I ask what the therapies are treating?" "Her isolation," Marcus snapped. "Her inability to communicate, her—" He stopped himself. "Her condition." Teresa studied the schedule, then looked up. "What does Olivia like to do?" The question caught him off balance. "What?" For fun, what makes her happy? Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. When was the last time he'd thought about Olivia's happiness versus her developmental milestones? She likes textures, soft things. The occupational therapist says it's sensory-seeking behavior. Does she smile? Teresa asked. Of course she smiles. When? Silence. Teresa set the schedule down gently. Mr. Brennan, I'll follow your rules, but I'd like to add one of my own. You're not in a position to make demands. Not a demand, a request. She met his eyes again, that same unshakable calm. 1 hour a day where Olivia doesn't have therapy or schedules, just time to be a little girl. That's not how development works. That's how childhood works, Teresa said softly. May I meet her? Marcus wanted to say no, wanted to end this interview and call the agency back, demand someone with proper credentials, someone who understood that structure and science were the only weapons against his daughter's silence. Instead, he found himself nodding. Follow me. Olivia's room looked like a medical facility disguised as a nursery. The walls were painted pale pink, but monitoring equipment lined one side. Pulse oximeter, humidifier with attached air quality sensors, baby monitor with video feed. The crib had been replaced by a toddler bed with safety rails. Toys sat in labeled bins, organized by developmental category: fine motor skills, gross motor skills, sensory development, cognitive growth. The 4-year-old sat cross-legged on a foam mat, staring at a picture book without turning the pages. She wore a purple dress that probably cost more than Teresa made in a month. White tights, small leather shoes. Her dark hair, Elena's hair, Marcus thought with a pang, was pulled into 2 neat ponytails. She didn't look up when they entered. Marcus walked to where she could see him, knelt down, and waved. Olivia's eyes shifted to him. No smile, no excitement, just acknowledgement. He signed slowly, new friend. Her name Teresa. Olivia's gaze moved to Teresa, assessing. Her small hands stayed motionless in her lap. Teresa crouched down about 5 feet away, not invading the child's space. She didn't wave or sign. She simply sat, folding her legs beneath her, and waited. Marcus watched, confused. Aren't you going to introduce yourself? She's watching me, Teresa said quietly. Children read more than words. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Olivia set the book aside and crawled, not walked, closer to Teresa. She stopped about 2 feet away, studying this new person with the intensity only children possess. Teresa slowly lifted her hand and touched her own chest, then pointed to Olivia. You and me. Simple, non-threatening. Olivia's head tilted, her small hand lifted, mimicking the gesture, touching her own chest, then pointing back at Teresa. Teresa smiled, not the broad, performative smile most caregivers deployed, but something genuine and small. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small object, a smooth stone, gray with white veins running through it. She held it out in her palm, not pushing it toward Olivia, just offering. Olivia's eyes locked on the stone. Slowly, cautiously, she reached out and took it. Her fingers traced the smooth surface, following the white veins. Then, for the first time since Marcus had entered the room, Olivia smiled. It was tiny, barely there, but real. Teresa signed. Pretty, yes? Olivia nodded, clutched the stone to her chest. Marcus felt something crack in his chest, a fissure in the armor he'd built. She can start Monday, he heard himself say. Teresa arrived at 6:45 a.m. on Monday, 15 minutes early again. Marcus was already awake. He rarely slept more than 4 hours, working in his home office with coffee growing cold, beside his keyboard. He pulled up the security feed and watched her let herself in with the key code he'd provided. She moved through the penthouse quietly, not like she was sneaking, but like someone conscious of a sleeping child. She set her bag down in the kitchen, washed her hands thoroughly, then simply stood by Olivia's door for a moment, head bowed. Praying, Marcus realized with distaste. He'd been clear about not proselytizing, but when Teresa entered Olivia's room, she didn't brandish her faith like a weapon. She simply approached the bed, gently touched Olivia's shoulder until the child's eyes opened, and signed, "Good morning, beautiful girl." The schedule said breakfast at 7, physical therapy at 8:30. Teresa did neither. Instead, she helped Olivia dress, then led her to the living room, not the therapy room, and did something Marcus had never seen in 4 years. She played. She spread a soft blanket on the floor and brought out toys from the bins, but not in any therapeutic order. She let Olivia choose. The little girl reached for soft things, a stuffed elephant, a velvet pillow, a silk scarf. Teresa sat with her and did nothing else, didn't try to turn it into a lesson, didn't count out exercises, just sat while Olivia explored textures, running the silk through her fingers over and over, pressing her face against the velvet. At 7, Teresa prepared breakfast, oatmeal with honey and blueberries, the breakfast on the schedule. But she let Olivia eat at her own pace, didn't force the spoon into proper grip position, didn't count bites. At 8:30, when the physical therapist arrived, Olivia wasn't ready. She was still on the blanket, still clutching the silk scarf. The therapist, a stern woman named Ms. Kowalski, frowned. "She needs to transition to the therapy room now. We're on a schedule." Teresa looked up calmly. "She's transitioning. Give her 2 minutes." "The research says—" "The research doesn't live with her," Teresa said gently but firmly. 2 minutes. Ms. Kowalski opened her mouth to argue, then noticed Marcus had entered the room. "Mr. Brennan, I need to maintain schedule integrity for optimal—" Marcus surprised himself. "Give her 2 minutes," he said quietly. After Ms. Kowalski left, Teresa signed to Olivia. "Time to move. Bring your scarf." Olivia stood, scarf still clutched tight, and walked to the therapy room without resistance. That night, reviewing the footage, Marcus watched that morning's interaction 3 times. Teresa hadn't followed the schedule, but Olivia had smiled more in 1 hour than in the previous week combined. He told himself it meant nothing. Schedules existed for a reason, but he didn't fire her. On Thursday of the first week, Marcus's calendar showed 3 back-to-back meetings: Tokyo at 6 a.m., London at 9 a.m., Los Angeles at 2 p.m. His assistant confirmed his car would arrive at 5:45 to take him to the office downtown. He left the penthouse in darkness, Olivia still sleeping. Teresa not yet arrived. By 3 p.m. he was trapped in a conference room with 12 lawyers arguing over intellectual property clauses. His phone buzzed. Security alert. He glanced at it, expecting package delivery or maintenance access. Instead, living room motion detected. Audio anomaly flagged. Audio anomaly. Marcus opened the security app, pulling up the live feed. Teresa sat cross-legged on the living room floor. Olivia sat facing her, maybe 3 feet away, and Teresa was singing. Her voice came through his phone's speaker, soft and clear. "Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world, red and yellow, black and white. They are precious in his sight." Marcus's jaw clenched. He'd specifically said no religious indoctrination, but then he saw Olivia. The little girl wasn't just watching Teresa's mouth move. She was moving herself, swaying, tiny movements, barely perceptible but rhythmic. Her hands lifted slightly, fingers spreading and closing in patterns that matched. She's feeling the vibrations, Marcus realized. Teresa wasn't just singing. She was sitting close enough that Olivia could feel the sound waves through the air, through the floor. The child couldn't hear the words, but she was experiencing the music. Teresa's hands moved as she sang, signing the words simultaneously. Jesus died for all the children of the world. Olivia's small fingers tried to copy the signs. Clumsy, uncertain, but trying. Then Teresa did something that made Marcus's breath catch. She reached out, slowly, telegraphing the movement, and placed her palm flat against Olivia's chest. She resumed singing, and Olivia's eyes went wide. She could feel the vibrations through Teresa's hand, directly. Feel the rhythm of words she'd never hear. Olivia's mouth opened. A sound came out, not words, not even close, but vocalization, a humming noise trying to match the vibration she felt. Teresa's face lit up like sunrise. She didn't make a big deal of it, didn't clap or squeal. She just kept singing, kept her hand pressed gently to Olivia's chest, and let the little girl's voice join hers in whatever way it could. Marcus stood in that conference room, 12 lawyers still arguing around him, and couldn't move, couldn't breathe. For 4 years, specialists had told him Olivia would never vocalize. Why would she? She couldn't hear herself. Deaf children rarely developed oral speech without intensive intervention. But there she was, humming, trying to sing along to a song she couldn't hear, with a woman she'd known for 4 days. "Mr. Brennan," one of the lawyers was staring at him. "Are you all right?" "Meeting's over," Marcus said, his voice rough. "We'll resume tomorrow." He left 16 people sitting in confused silence and headed for the elevator. Marcus reached the penthouse at 4:07 p.m. He stood outside the door, hand on the keypad, listening. He couldn't hear anything. The door was too well insulated, but somehow he was afraid. Afraid of breaking whatever fragile thing was happening inside. Afraid that his presence would shatter it. He entered quietly. Teresa and Olivia were in the kitchen. Afternoon snack time, according to the schedule. But Teresa had transformed it. She'd spread a tablecloth on the floor, picnic style, and laid out apple slices, cheese cubes, crackers. Nothing fancy, just food arranged with care. Olivia sat cross-legged, still wearing that purple dress, carefully placing cheese on crackers. Teresa sat across from her, mirroring her movements. They both looked up when Marcus appeared in the doorway. Teresa's expression remained calm, but her hands moved quickly. "You're home early," Marcus nodded, signed back. Meeting ended. Olivia scrambled to her feet and ran to him, actually ran, something the physical therapist had been trying to encourage for months. She grabbed his hand and pulled, trying to drag him toward the tablecloth. Teresa signed to her, "Show Daddy our picnic." Olivia's hands moved rapidly. "We eating on floor. Fun." Marcus let himself be pulled down. He sat awkwardly on the floor in his $3,000 suit, picking up a cracker, and Olivia handed him cheese with such pride you'd think she'd prepared a 5-course meal. Teresa signed to Olivia, "Go get the strawberries from the fridge." When the little girl skipped away, Teresa turned to Marcus. Her hands moved carefully. "I broke schedule, I'm sorry." But she was happy. Marcus should have said something about protocol, about research-backed developmental strategies, about the importance of structure. Instead, he signed. She was singing. Teresa blinked. "You saw. I was watching the cameras." His hands hesitated. "How did you do that?" Teresa's expression softened. She can't hear sound, but she can feel it. Vibrations, rhythm, movement. Music is more than what ears receive. Doctors said she'd never vocalize. Doctors know medicine, Teresa signed slowly, but sometimes they don't know what a child wants to do, only what they think she can't. Olivia returned with strawberries, oblivious to the conversation. She distributed them with solemn importance. 2 for Daddy, 2 for Teresa, 3 for herself. Marcus ate his strawberries. The fruit tasted sweeter than anything he'd had in months. That night, after Teresa left and Olivia was asleep, Marcus sat in his office with the security footage pulled up. He rewound to that morning, watching Teresa pray before entering Olivia's room. He watched her sign hymns while changing diapers, watched her press her hand to Olivia's chest during songs. He watched his daughter, the child doctors said, would never express joy through sound, humming. Marcus closed the laptop slowly. For 4 years, he'd been so busy managing Olivia's limitations that he'd forgotten to look for her possibilities. Teresa had been in his home for 1 week, and she'd already found something he'd missed entirely. Hope. 3 weeks later, Marcus's Singapore meeting collapsed. The merger he'd flown 14 hours to negotiate fell apart in 40 minutes. The CEO across the table wanted terms Marcus wouldn't accept, wouldn't insult his shareholders with. He stood up mid-presentation, shook hands with men who looked stunned, and walked out. His assistant called as he reached the hotel lobby. "Sir, should I reschedule Tokyo for—" "Cancel everything," Marcus said. "I'm going home." "Home? But you're not scheduled to return until—" "I said I'm going home." 22 hours later, jet-lagged and running on coffee and fury, Marcus stepped off his private plane at Teterboro. His driver looked surprised. "Mr. Brennan, I wasn't expecting you until Thursday." "Neither was I," Marcus muttered, sliding into the back seat. The drive into Manhattan felt longer than the flight from Singapore. Marcus stared out the window at a city that never looked the same twice, his mind churning through the failed deal, the lost revenue, the disappointed board members who'd been counting on this merger. He'd built an empire by never accepting defeat. But today, defeat had won. The penthouse was quiet when he entered at 2:47 p.m. The security panel showed Teresa and Olivia were home. Wednesday afternoon, which meant occupational therapy, had just ended. The therapist's car wasn't in the garage log. She'd already left. Marcus set his briefcase down, loosened his tie. He should shower, change, sleep for 3 days straight. Instead, he found himself walking toward the living room, drawn by something he couldn't name. He heard it before he saw anything. Music, soft, gentle, coming from behind the half-closed door. Not recorded music, a human voice, Teresa's voice. Marcus stopped in the hallway, hand on the doorframe. He should announce himself, walk in normally, but something made him stay still, listening. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. The song was old, the kind grandmothers sang in churches, with wooden pews and stained glass. Teresa's voice wasn't trained or perfect, just honest and warm. Marcus eased the door open another inch. Teresa sat on the piano bench, the Steinway grand that had sat untouched since Elena died, the instrument his wife had played every evening before Olivia was born. Teresa's hands rested on the keys, pressing them gently, not playing a melody but creating vibrations. Olivia stood beside her, small hands pressed flat against the piano's side, eyes closed, feeling the wood hum. And then Marcus heard something that stopped his heart. His daughter's voice. Ah. Not humming, not random vocalization. Olivia was trying to match pitch. Marcus's hand flew to the doorframe to steady himself. Teresa continued singing, her voice gentle and patient. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. And Olivia, his daughter who had never spoken, never sung, never made purposeful vocal sound in 4 years of life, opened her mouth and sound poured out. Ah, ooh. The pitch was off. The tone wavered, but it was deliberate, intentional. She was singing. Teresa's hands moved to sign. Good, sweet girl, try again. She pressed another key, and Olivia leaned in, feeling the vibration. Her mouth opened. Closer, closer to the note. Teresa's face radiated pure joy. Yes, you're doing it. Then Olivia's small voice shaped something that sounded almost like a word. Ma. Marcus's phone slipped from his pocket. It hit the marble floor with a crack that echoed through the hallway. Both Teresa and Olivia spun toward the sound. Teresa's eyes went wide. Olivia's hands flew up in startled surprise. Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, phone shattered at his feet. his whole body trembling, his knees weakened. He grabbed the door frame with both hands to keep from collapsing. "Mr. Brennan." Teresa started to sign, but Marcus couldn't focus on her hands. He was staring at his daughter, at the little girl doctors had told him would never produce meaningful speech, never vocalize intentionally, never, never, never. And she had just tried to say, "Mama," the word Elena would never hear, the word Marcus thought Olivia would never speak. His chest cracked open. 4 years of grief, rage, exhaustion, and buried hope came flooding out in a single moment. His vision blurred, his throat closed. Olivia ran to him, confused by the strange look on Daddy's face. She grabbed his hands, pulling, trying to get him to come see the piano. Marcus dropped to his knees on the hard marble floor. He pulled Olivia into his arms and held her so tightly she squirmed. Tears poured down his face, silent, unstoppable. Teresa stood slowly, uncertain. Her hands moved. "I'm sorry. I should have asked permission to use the piano. Marcus shook his head violently. He set Olivia down gently and stood on shaking legs. His hands trembled as he signed, "How?" One word, but it contained everything. Teresa took a breath. The doctors said she'd never hear. They're right, but they said she'd never sing. They're wrong. She's deaf. She's feeling sound. Teresa signed carefully, through vibration, through touch, through the air itself. "I've been teaching her that music isn't just in ears, it's everywhere." Marcus's hands dropped. He stared at this woman, this caregiver with no formal training, no medical degree, no credentials beyond calloused hands and a battered Bible, and she had done what $2 million in specialists couldn't. She'd given his daughter a voice. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat in his office, surveillance footage playing on loop. He watched Teresa and Olivia at the piano, watched them lying on the floor with hands pressed to a speaker, feeling bass notes pulse through their bodies. Watched Teresa signing songs while Olivia tried to mimic the mouth shapes, the vocal effort, even though she couldn't hear herself. 3 weeks. Teresa had been here 3 weeks. Marcus had spent 4 years. 4 years of the best doctor's money could buy. 4 years of research and protocols and therapeutic interventions. And a maid from Queens with 3 jobs and a 5th-floor walk-up had done what he couldn't. The thought felt like acid in his chest. He should be grateful. He was grateful, wasn't he? But underneath gratitude was something uglier, something that writhed in his gut like a living thing. Jealousy. When Olivia looked at Teresa, her whole face lit up. When she saw Marcus, she smiled, but it was different, careful, conditional. Teresa got the real smiles, the spontaneous laughter, the trust. Marcus stood abruptly pacing to the window. Manhattan glittered below, a city he'd conquered through will and wealth. But in his own home, with his own daughter, a woman making $15 an hour had accomplished what his empire couldn't. The jealousy twisted deeper, wrapping around his ribs, squeezing. His phone buzzed. A text from his head of security. "Dr. Chen available for consultation tomorrow 9 a.m. Wants to evaluate new developments with Olivia." Dr. Patricia Chen, the audiologist who'd delivered the original diagnosis, the specialist who'd said profound bilateral deafness, permanent, no meaningful intervention available. Marcus stared at the message. Teresa's methods weren't medical, weren't proven, weren't safe. What if Olivia was trying to vocalize in ways that damaged her throat? What if the vibration training was giving her false hope? What if she fell off that piano bench and cracked her skull because Teresa wasn't following proper safety protocols? The rationalizations came easily, each one reasonable, each one hiding the truth underneath. He couldn't stand that someone else had saved his daughter. Marcus's fingers moved across his phone screen. Schedule Dr. Chen. Have her review all footage of Teresa's interactions. I need a medical opinion on whether these methods are appropriate. He hit send. And in that moment, he made the worst decision of his life. Dr. Chen arrived Friday morning with her tablet and her credentials and her medical certainty. Marcus sat across from her in his office, security footage queued up. She watched Teresa at the piano with Olivia, watched the vocalization attempts, watched the vibration training. When the footage ended, Dr. Chen set her tablet down carefully. "Mr. Brennan," she said, "I need to be frank with you. Please. What I'm seeing is unconventional. There's no peer-reviewed research supporting vibration training as a speech development tool for profoundly deaf children. The vocalization she's encouraging could strain Olivia's vocal cords, and emotionally." She paused. "You're giving Olivia hope for something that can't happen. She'll never hear herself speak. This is false hope, potentially damaging." The words landed exactly where Marcus needed them. "What do you recommend?" he asked quietly. "Return to evidence-based protocols. The caregiver seems well-meaning, but she's not qualified to make therapeutic decisions. You need someone with proper credentials." Marcus nodded slowly. "Thank you, Dr. Chen." After she left, he sat alone in his office for an hour. He told himself he was protecting Olivia, told himself doctors knew best, told himself Teresa had overstepped, gotten too involved, created dangerous expectations. He didn't admit the truth, that watching his daughter love someone else more than him had broken something inside him that was already cracked. At 4 p.m., Teresa arrived for her evening shift. Marcus was waiting in the living room. "We need to talk," he said. Teresa stood in the living room, hands clasped in front of her, reading Marcus's body language before he spoke. "This isn't working out," Marcus said, his voice flat, controlled. "I've consulted with Dr. Chen. She has concerns about your methods." Teresa's expression didn't change. She simply nodded once. "You're encouraging Olivia to vocalize when she can't hear herself," Marcus continued, the rehearsed words coming easier now. "You're using the piano without authorization. You're creating expectations that can't be met. It's—" He paused. "It's inappropriate." "Inappropriate," Teresa repeated softly, not a question, just acknowledgement. "I need someone with proper credentials. Someone who follows established protocols. I'm sure you understand." Teresa looked at him for a long moment. Her hands moved slowly. "You're afraid." Marcus's jaw clenched. "Excuse me?" Her hands continued. "Not of my methods, of what they mean. That someone else reached her when you couldn't. That's not—" "It's okay to be afraid," Teresa signed, "but firing me won't fix it." "This conversation is over," Marcus said coldly. "You'll receive 2 weeks' severance. Please collect your things." Teresa walked to the kitchen where her bag sat. She pulled out the small leather Bible, tucked it away carefully, then returned. "May I say goodbye to her?" "No," Marcus said. "It's better if you just leave." Something flickered across Teresa's face. Not anger, but deep sadness. She signed one last thing. "She'll ask for me, every day, and you'll have to watch her heart break because of your pride." Then she walked to the door, opened it, and left without looking back. The penthouse fell silent. Marcus stood alone in his living room, surrounded by cameras and monitors and all the wealth in the world. And for the first time since Teresa arrived, the silence felt like death. Olivia asked for Teresa the moment she woke up. Her small hands signed frantically. "Where Teresa? Want sing, want piano." Marcus knelt beside her bed. "She's not coming back. We have new helper." "No, want Teresa." The new caregiver, Ms. Rodriguez, impeccable credentials, 20 years of experience, arrived at 7 a.m. sharp. She followed the schedule perfectly. Breakfast at 7, physical therapy at 8:30, everything by the book. Olivia refused to eat, refused therapy, sat on the floor in the living room, signing Teresa's name over and over. By day 3, She'd stopped signing altogether. By day 5, she wouldn't make eye contact. By day 7, she'd returned to the silent, withdrawn child Marcus remembered from before Teresa. Worse than before because now she knew what she'd lost. Marcus watched through the cameras as his daughter sat motionless on the piano bench, hands resting on the keys but not pressing them, just sitting, waiting. She was waiting for Teresa to come back and make the piano sing. Ms. Rodriguez reported with professional concern. She's non-responsive to all interventions. I recommend psychiatric evaluation. That night, Marcus found a drawing under Olivia's bed. Crayon on paper. 3 figures, Daddy, Olivia, and Teresa. But Teresa's figure had been scribbled over with black crayon until it was just a dark hole in the page. Marcus held that drawing in his shaking hands and finally understood what he'd done. He'd destroyed the one good thing that had happened to his daughter in 4 years. And he'd done it because his ego couldn't survive someone else being her hero. Marcus stood outside the 5th-floor walk-up in Queens at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. The building was old, paint peeling, iron fire escape zigzagging down the brick face, so different from his world of glass and marble. He climbed the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. Apartment 5C. He knocked. A teenage boy opened the door. Teresa's younger brother, Marcus guessed. The kid's eyes widened when he recognized the billionaire from news articles. "Is Teresa here?" Marcus asked. "She doesn't want to see you," the boy said flatly. "Please, I need to speak with her. You fired her, made her cry for 3 days straight. Now you want to talk?" The kid started closing the door. "Wait!" Marcus put his hand out. "My daughter, she's not eating, not speaking. I made a mistake. I need Teresa's help." "Should have thought about that before," the boy said, and slammed the door. Marcus stood in that narrow hallway, staring at chipped paint and a door that wouldn't open. He knocked again and again. Finally, a woman's voice, not Teresa, called through the door. "Go away or I call the police." Marcus leaned his forehead against the door. "Please," he said quietly, "please, I'm not here as her employer. I'm here as a father who failed his daughter." Silence. Then the door opened a crack. An elderly woman, Teresa's grandmother, peered out. "You broke that girl's heart," she said in accented English. "She loved your daughter, and you threw her away like trash." "I know," Marcus whispered. "I know what I did, and I can't fix it, but maybe she can. Why should she go back? So you can hurt her again?" Marcus's voice cracked. "Because my daughter drew a picture of her and scribbled it out in black. Because she sits at a piano and won't play. Because she's waiting for someone who believed in her when no one else did, not even me." The grandmother studied him for a long moment. Then she opened the door wider. Teresa sat at a small kitchen table, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt, eyes red from crying. She looked up when Marcus entered and her expression closed off immediately. Marcus stood awkwardly in the tiny kitchen, this man who commanded boardrooms and bent industries to his will, completely powerless. "I'm sorry," he said. His hands signed it too. "Sorry." Teresa's hands stayed in her lap. "Dr. Chen was wrong," Marcus continued. "I was wrong. You were helping Olivia, and I fired you because—" His voice broke. "Because I was jealous. Because you reached her in ways I couldn't. Because watching my daughter love you made me realize how badly I'd failed her." Teresa's expression didn't soften. Marcus pulled out his phone with shaking hands. He showed her the video from this morning. Olivia sitting at the piano, hands on the keys, silent tears running down her face. "She's waiting for you," Marcus whispered. "She thinks you abandoned her, and it's my fault." Teresa watched the video, and her own tears started falling. "Please," Marcus said, "I'll pay you anything. I'll give you whatever you want. Just please come back." "I don't want your money," Teresa said quietly, her first words to him. She wiped her face. I never did. Then what do you want? Teresa looked at him with those steady eyes. I want you to show up. Actually show up. Not through cameras, not through reports. I want you to sit on that floor with your daughter and feel the piano vibrate. I want you to sing with her, even though she can't hear you. I want you to be her father, not her manager. Marcus's throat closed. I don't know how. Then learn, Teresa said. I'll come back, but this time you work too. No more hiding behind schedules and protocols. You be present. Or I walk again, and this time I won't come back. Marcus nodded, tears streaming down his face. I promise. When Teresa walked through the penthouse door the next morning, Olivia was sitting on the living room floor, listless, staring at nothing. Then she saw Teresa. The little girl's eyes went wide. For a moment she didn't move, like she was afraid Teresa might be a dream. Then she screamed, a raw, wordless sound of pure joy, and ran. Teresa dropped to her knees and caught Olivia in her arms. The child sobbed against her shoulder, small body shaking. Teresa held her tight, crying too. I'm here, she signed against Olivia's back. I'm here, I'm staying. Marcus watched from the doorway, and the jealousy that had poisoned him was gone. In its place was gratitude so overwhelming it brought him to his knees. That afternoon, Teresa did something unprecedented. She made Marcus sit at the piano with them. Press this key, she told him. Now hold your hand on Olivia's chest like this. Marcus pressed the key, held his hand gently against his daughter's small chest, felt her inhale, felt her try to match the vibration with her voice. Ah. For the first time in 4 years, Marcus wasn't watching his daughter through a screen. He was with her, present, real. Teresa began to sing, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. Marcus didn't know the words, but he tried to hum along, off-key, awkward, but trying, and Olivia, held between them, feeling the vibrations through 2 sets of hands, opened her mouth and sang. Ma. Marcus's tears fell onto his daughter's hair. Mama, he whispered. Yes, baby, Mama. Olivia looked up at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in months, she smiled at her father like he mattered, like he was finally present, like he was finally hers. The penthouse looked different now. The medical equipment was gone, replaced by musical instruments. A drum Olivia could pound and feel, wind chimes she could touch to make vibrate. The piano played every single day. Marcus worked from home 3 days a week. When he traveled, he was back within 48 hours. No more 2-week trips. No more choosing the empire over his daughter. Teresa became more than a caregiver. She became family. Auntie Teresa, Olivia called her in the rough, beautiful voice she was learning to shape. One evening, as the 3 of them sat on the floor doing vibration exercises, Olivia signed something new. Daddy here, happy. Marcus looked at his daughter, then at Teresa, then at the life they'd built together from the ruins of his pride. Yes, he whispered, signing it too. Daddy here. Finally here. And in the silence his daughter would never escape, Marcus finally understood. The greatest wealth wasn't what you built. It was who you became when you stopped building walls and started building bridges. True fortune wasn't measured in billions. It was measured in moments like these, a father, a daughter, and a woman who refused to give up on either of them, sitting on a floor in a Manhattan penthouse, feeling music they couldn't hear but could finally, beautifully share. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me what part moved you most. New inspiring stories are coming every week on this channel. See you in the next story.